So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the class on statistics. This is our third class on statistics. And in today's class, we're going to talk about our discussion on how we can work on a statistical process. So in the statistical process, so far I have discussed about how we can work on statistics. Once we are clear with our objective, then the first thing we'll talk about the collection of data. Already we talked about primary data, secondary data. Then the next step after we have collected the data, either it is primary or secondary, every way have their own advantages and disadvantages. Once we are done with the collection of the data, the next thing what we do, we talk about the next thing we talk about is the organization and the classification of the data. Next thing we do is organization and the classification of data. Next thing we'll talk about organization and the classification of the data. So once we have collected the data, once we have data with us, so what we need to do, we need to make sure that we can organize the data in appropriate manner. Okay, so we'll talk about divisions here. So when we talk about organization, already we talked about in what ways we can organize the data. We can follow quantitative classification. So if we follow quantitative classification, the other name of quantitative classification is cardinal classification. Then we follow qualitative classification. So we can follow qualitative classification. So all the data related to nationality or region or something, we can group them together. That is called qualitative classification. Remember, yesterday I've shown you the data of COVID patient which was being collected. So we divided them on the basis of which district they belong to, which state they belong to. So all that comes under qualitative classification. Qualitative classification, another name is ordinal classification. So this is ordinal, this is cardinal. Okay, this is cardinal. Then we have geographical classification. We have discussed about them in past. So I know you would be wondering why sir is repeating the same thing. Just this is just a kind of a revision for you. So the third thing would be the geographical classification. So when we talk about geographical classification, the another name of geographical classification is spatial classification, SPATIAL. Okay, and the last one, last and the very important is the temporal. Temporal means based on the time period. That is called as temporal classification. So once we have a data with us, if we are trying to organize and group the data, we can group them into different parameters. We can group them either quantitatively or either we can group them qualitatively or on the based on geography or on the basis of time period. So once that grouping is done, then the next thing is the analysis. The analysis is the most important thing. So the third part on working on the data is the analysis on the data. So if we trying to analyze the data, if we are trying to analyze the data, we follow different statistical technique. So we that statistical technique of analysis we are going to discuss in further classes. Okay, we are going to talk about measure of central tendency, measure of dispersion, correlation, regression. We'll talk about theory of attribute, interpolation, extrapolation. So all together, mainly in the subject statistics, whatever we'll study henceforth in the future, that would be mainly related to analysis part only. So when we talk about analysis part, when we are trying to analyze the data, your data can be either it can be univariate data, it can be bivariate data, it can be multivariate data. Univariate data means single data. You're trying to do postmortem on the single data, so you'll try to find the average values, you try to find the dispersion. Then it will called as univariate data analysis, while in bivariate data analysis we try to find the relation between two forms of data. So they can be both can be independent or they can be independent and dependent. That is called bivariate. There we study correlation, regression. Correlation is the relationship between two independent variables, while regression is a relationship between an independent variable and an independent variable, where there's a dependent variable which is dependent on the independent variable. Then we have something called multivariate data analysis. Altogether, whatever all forms of analysis we do, either we follow parametric method or we follow non-parametric methods. Non-parametrics method are not that much important for your exam purpose. Usually every year one theory question comes on non-parametric. We'll discuss about them at the last only. Right now we'll focus more on parametrics method to analyze the data. So when we are analyzing the data, we can either follow univariate data analysis. We'll either follow univariate data analysis. We'll either follow univariate data analysis, or we'll follow bivariate data analysis, or we'll follow bivariate data analysis, or we'll follow multivariate data analysis. Multivariate means a single variable is dependent on lot of variables. Like the best example what I can find about multivariate data analysis is the movement of currency. So if you take finance, probably you'll study currency in international finance subject in fourth semester in your MBA. So in multivariate data analysis, if I say $1 is right now 83 rupees. So if $1 is 83 rupees, it depends on lot of factors. It depends upon the interest rate differential between USA and India. It depends upon the inflation rate differential between the two countries. It depends upon GDP deflator between the two countries. It depends upon the purchasing power parity of two countries. Lot of parameters are there. Lot of visibles, lot of invisible variables are there which will impact the movement of the currency. So these whatever the terms I talked about, those are mainly econometrics methods, or like quantitatively methods which can ultimately impact the value of the currency. But altogether, the lot of trading activities are performing altogether in currency market, and those trading scenarios based on speculation or arbitration, what different traders would be following or they would be assuming depending upon what likely can happen on Indian economy with respect to the US economy, that can also derive the value of currency. Okay, many times the RBI has to interfere into the currency movement scenario, and thereby the RBI has to make sure that our currency should not depreciate beyond a certain level, neither it should appreciate beyond a certain level. So that form of currency movement, when we look into here, that comes under multivariate data analysis, where we try to see the impact of multiple variables on single variable, which here multivariate data analysis will work all the scenarios which are macroeconomic in nature. All the scenarios which are macroeconomics are in nature, all those scenarios which that will ultimately will impact your value of your currency. And that way when we do research, it we discuss that under multivariate data analysis. I hope you are getting that. A single variable is there called currency movement. It looks very simple. Okay, I just need to go to here, and I just go to some website, financial website. I just need to go there, and I just need to see, okay, fine, what is the value of rupee dollar? So I just need to see what is the value. Sensex is today 60,337. Nifty is around 18,000. Gold future is around 1827. This in dollar per ounce. In the international market, the gold trade in ounce, not in gram. In India, gold trade in gram, but in international market, gold trade in ounce. So you can Google it. 1 ounce is equal to how many gram? 1 ounce is equal to how many gram. You can do that. So in the international market, when we trade in gold, we'll trade in ounce. 1 ounce is equal to 28.34 gram. It's near about that. So you can see gold future. Now what is futures and all? Future forward, everything we'll discuss in derivatives in future. In future, when I'll teach you a derivative in finance, that time we'll discuss about them. Silver future, then USD INR. So right now USD INR is 74.37. You can see the movement of currency today. So what is a movement of currency? So what is happening? So it went to very deep of around 74.07. So rupee has appreciated to 74.07, and now it again depreciated. It become around 74.37. What is appreciation of rupee, depreciation of rupee, how it impact us, how it impacting our market, how the rupee value goes up and down, all that you'll understand gradually if you take finance and all. So you can see IPO latest news. Other things we'll discuss about what is IPO, how the Paytm coming with an IPO, what this IPO is all about. Tomorrow we'll discuss about business and industry. There will give you basic understanding about what IPOs and all about. Okay, fine. So I hope you are getting this scenario. So when we are trying to analyze the data, when we talk about analysis on data, in analysis on the data, when we are talking about here, we'll talk about univariate data analysis. In univariate data analysis, we'll study when I'll talk about univariate data analysis. So when we do univariate data analysis, where there there will study something called measure of central tendency. We'll use the terms like measure of central tendency. We'll use terms like measure of dispersion. We'll use measure of central tendency, measure of dispersion. To do the post-mortem of the data in measure of central tendency, we'll study mean, we'll study median, we'll study mode. Okay, so the relation between mean, median, mode, you can remember mode is equal to 3 median minus 2 mean. You can remember mode is equal to 3 median minus 2 mean. And mean, when we say mean, mean can be arithmetic mean, mean can be a arithmetic mean, or it can be geometric mean, or it can be harmonic mean. Mean can be arithmetic mean, it can be geometric mean, or it can be harmonic mean. The relation between them is arithmetic mean is greater than or equal to geometric mean, that is greater than equal to harmonic mean, where the square of geometric mean is arithmetic mean into harmonic mean. In maths, when I teach maths inequality chapter, there I use this relationship to solve the inequalities values. Okay, so anyway, we'll talk about the applications and all. What is arithmetic mean, geometric mean, harmonic mean? So all that we'll study in measure of dispersion, in measure central tendency. Sorry, measure dispersion. We'll study variance. Okay, we'll study standard deviation. We'll study variance. We'll study standard deviation. Okay, we'll study mean deviation, quartile deviation. We'll study mean deviation, quartile deviation. So all these things we'll study in measure of dispersion. So measure of dispersion, measure of central tendency, they are the part of univariate data analysis. Then when we talk about bivariate data analysis, in bivariate data analysis, we'll find the relation between two variables. Here we'll study correlation and regression. Here we'll study correlation and regression. So correlation is the relationship between two independent variables, while regression is the relationship between two variables where one variable is dependent on the other variable. That is called regression. Correlation is basically the finding the relation between the two variables where if both the variables are independent of each other. Fine. So we in bivariate data analysis, what we do, we trying to bridge the gap between the two set of the data. That is what we do in bivariate data analysis. In univariate data analysis, we try to understand the nature of one set of data. What all can we get to understand if we get a single set of the data? So we can find their average, means where generally the value is lying. We can find the dispersion in the values, how dispersed is the value, or how stationary is the value. That also we can find by studying measure of dispersion. Then correlation regression can help us to establish the relation between different set of variables. In multiple data analysis, when we do that, when we talk about multiple data analysis, we'll study about them more or less in postgraduate and or PhD levels, where probably we look into in macroeconomics how by using econometrics techniques how we can find the relation between different variables which all together dependent on a single variable, and that how they are impacting the value of that variable. So that we do in multivariate data analysis. So this all are the basic terminologies what we are doing in the analysis part. Also, there are such forms of data which are there on the basis of time period. we'll follow time series analysis on them. So time series analysis is nothing but it's an application of regression tools only. So through time series analysis, we try to find the trend of the set of values. The trend can be a linear trend, it can be parabolic trend, whatever the trend it is of a data. So we try to establish the trend. These things ultimately will help us when we do technical analysis in the finance. These things will help us when we discuss about demand forecasting in MS Excel, when we study business analytics. The same thing will help us when we do marketing analytics or human resource analytics. So these application statistics will ultimately will gonna help us in all possible domain what we need to gather information about. Okay, so I hope you are getting about what is univariate analysis, what is bivariate analysis, what is multivariate analysis. Predominantly, when we look into the data, your data are either discrete data or your data is either continuous data. So discrete data, when we try to analyze discrete data, we will prefer to follow binomial distribution or Poisson distribution when we are analyzing the discrete data. While if we have a continuous data, so all forms of continuous data analysis we do by using normal distribution. We'll do by plotting normal distribution, where we believe that more or less when your data are continuous, everything follow normal distribution. So when we try to theoretically describe the distribution of the data, we believe that it follow a bell-shaped curve, which we call a normal distribution. Okay, and this form of distribution is also called as mesocurtic distribution. What is mesocurtic distribution? Leptocurtic, paracurtic. Okay, the symmetrical, asymmetry, skewness, kurtosis, all that we are going to discuss in the future. Right now, we are not that much interested to understand, but you can understand generally when you look into the data. Whenever we are performing statistical analysis here, so the majority of analysis, what we do, we assume that it follow normal distribution curve. So this is what your normal distribution curve is all about, where we believe that the majority of the data lies at the center, and this tendency of the data where your majority of data lies at the center, that is called as measure of central tendency, where not all the data will lie at the center. Certain data would be dispersed from the center, so that will study under measure of dispersion. So this is how we look into the data scenario. Any doubt, anyone? Please ask question. So far we have discussed about univariate data analysis, multivariate, and bivariate data analysis when we are analyzing the data. Now, going further on the analysis part, once we are done with the analysis part, once we understood collection of data, then organization, classification of data, and now we are talking about analysis part on the data. Then further, after the analysis, once you understood, you have done your required mathematical homework, then the next thing what you need to do is to interpretation from the analysis of data. Interpretation from the analysis on data. So interpretation, what form of interpretation we can do on the analysis of the data. So you have done your analysis. Now you came up with some form of interpretation, because after doing so much mathematical calculation, from childhood when we do maths, we at the last we write some inference, no, what we understood. So that is what interpretation is all about. So whatever you interpreted, what you do, this interpretation you expect the rest of the world to understand. Okay, so your interpretation, how will you communicate to the rest of the world? So for that, we need to present the data. We need to talk about presentation of the data. So when we talk about presentation of the data, we talk about textual presentation. We talk about textual presentation. Textual presentation is all about like your data are given in text. You write a story, and you try to explain what has all happened. Textual presentation, like when the cricket match, today is a match between New Zealand and England. So what I'll do textual presentation of the match summary. So I'll write an article, what all has happened in the match. So that is a one way how I can present the my analysis about how it matched, how was the match. Or what I can do apart from textual presentation, I can do tabular presentation. So when we say tabular presentation, in the case of tabular presentation, we try to present the data in the form of table. So table way, when we try to present the data, it more or less it become more easier for the people to understand, because instead of being written as a story, we are presented with the set of data in the table. Okay, and then by reading the table, by reading not reading the table, by analyzing or by having a look over the values in the table, we can easily understand. So like balance sheet, PNL and L and all. So when we look into those values are given in the form of table. Because that those values are given in tabular way, it become easier for us to look into the present year data and to compare this year data with the X year data in the past. So altogether, if you want to do any form of analysis uh, as an investor point of view, you can do in much more better way, or your analysis would be much more effective if the data are given in the form of tabular way, not in the form textual way. Like textual way, the data would be given in the form of case study. You remember case studies, you'll do a lot of case studies in MBA. So that way, when data is given in the form tabular, in the form of tables, your analysis would be become much more easier to get through on the data. So that is what tabular presentation is all about. So when we look into the tabular presentation, we have the heading of the table. Then we have heading of the column, which is called caption. We have heading of row, which is called as uh, caption. The stub, the heading of the row is called stub. Then you have body part. Body part means what data is all about. So row wise heading is called a stub. A column wise heading is called caption. And then you have body where your the complete data is there. And then at the last, what you have source note, then you have footnote. Source note will talk about, is this data, is this table what you have presented in the tabular presentation. If that is yours, then there's no as such source note. If data is primary data, then you don't require source note. But if this is secondary data, we need to highlight the source from where we have taken the data. So which textbook or which mechanism we followed to got that data, that we need to put in the tabular presentation. So in tabular presentation, you have title, then you have caption, which is column heading, then you have stub, which is row heading, then you have body, and after the body, you have finally the footnote and source note. Clear? Anyone, any doubt? So so after tabular presentation, we have diagrammatic presentation. We have diagrammatic presentation. We have diagrammatic presentation, and then we have graphical presentation. So in diagrammatic presentation, we'll talk about line diagram. We'll talk about line diagram. We'll talk about bar diagram. We'll talk about line diagram, bar diagram. We'll talk about pie chart. In the graphical presentation, we'll study frequency, polygon, then frequency curve, then ogive, frequency polygon, frequency curve, then ogive, and then histogram. So basically, tabular presentation. in tabular presentation, you understand what is tabular presentation. Then we'll spend more time to understand diagrammatic and graphical presentation. So before that, I just need to solve some basic problems on tabular presentation. We'll try to solve. 1 minute, guys. Let's do some numerical on tabular presentation. Everyone, read this question number 1. Try to solve this question. You can speak if you have any doubt. I have unmuted everyone. Guys, everyone, if you have any doubt, you can speak. I have unmuted. So, how to solve this question? So, here, if you see, you have 1,000 persons, 25% of them are industrial workers. So, I can write industrial worker. I can take the help of tabular presentation. I can make a table, industrial worker and agricultural worker. So two kinds of workers are there. Okay, so the total is how much? 25% are industrial workers. So find 25% of 1,000. You'll get 250. Don't tell me how. So 25% of 1,000 you have to do. If you do 25% of 1,000, total 1,000 people are there. 25% of them are industrial workers. So 25% of 1,000 you can find. You will get 250. Remaining would be your agricultural worker. So remaining are 750. So your agricultural worker would be 750. Clear everyone? And the total it would be 1,000. Anyone, any doubt? This part clear, right, everyone? So total are 1,000. 25% of them are industrial worker. So if I find 25% of that, I'll get 250, which are your industrial worker. Remaining are agriculture worker, means 75%. So 75% of 1,000, that would be 750. So 750 are agriculture worker. This part everyone understood. Then what is given? 300 person enjoyed World Cup match on TV. So here other way I can do division. How many watch World Cup match? How many watch World Cup match? They do not watch World Cup match. They do not watch World Cup match. So how many watch World Cup match? 300 people watch. So 300 people watch World Cup match. So means 700 has not watched World Cup match. Clear everyone? Total you have 1,000 people. Okay. Then what is given? 30% of the people who have not watched World Cup match were industrial workers. So 30% of the people who have not watched World Cup match. So 30% of the people who have not watched World Cup match, who have not watched World Cup match, who have not watched World Cup match. So I hope you can understand this. So 30% of how much? 700, that is 210. This you have to find. Can you understand this? 30% of the people who have not watched World Cup match. So how many people have not watched World Cup match? 700 people have not watched. 30% of them. So 30% of that 700. So this 700, 30% of this 700, they were industrial workers. So remaining would be agricultural workers. 700 minus 210. I believe you'll get 490. Clear everyone? Any doubt? Any doubt anyone? So once you understood this, so you know this value total is 250. This is 210. So this would be what? 250 minus 210. This will be 40. If this is 40, this would be 300 minus 40. This will be 260. So question is that what is the number of agriculture workers who had watched World Cup match on TV? The number of agricultural workers who had watched World Cup match on TV. This is what you had to find. Any doubt, anyone? Is this part clear? So let's try this question number second. What we have. So in this question, if you see, we have a sample study of coffee habit in two towns in the year 2000. The following information is received: town A, town B. They are given some data. Let me just copy this data. So if I just copy this data and if I put it here, so I'll just draw a table based on this data, town A, town B. So let me draw a table. So coffee drinker, and non-coffee drinker, and non-coffee drinker. Coffee drinker, non-coffee drinker, then you have male, you have female. I can write this as total here, and then I can write total here. So you have male, female total. So if I write this for town A, if I write this for town A, so town A, female coffee drinker 40%, female coffee drinker 40%, then total coffee drinker 45%, total coffee drinker 45%. If the total coffee drinker is 45% and female is 40, so automatically the male will be 5%. Clear? Then male non-coffee drinker 20, male non-coffee drinker 20. If this is 45, This will be 100 minus 45. So this would be 55%. So this is 55%. This is 20. So this would be 35%. The total this would be 25%, 75%. So I got for town A, like the way I did for town A, like the same way I'll do for town B. So town B also, same way, male, and then I can do female for town B, male, female for town B, and then I can do total. So town B, male coffee drinker 55, town B, male coffee drinker 55. So once this is given, you don't have to do further. If you want answer, you had to compare this and this. So this was actual question. So 5 is to 55 you had to do. Male coffee drinker in town A divide by male coffee drinker in town B. So your answer would be 5 by 55 means 1 is to 11. But if you want to complete this, we can complete this. Otherwise, we got the answer before only. Male non-coffee drinker is 30. Male non-coffee drinker is 30. So this would be 85%. This is 100. So this would be 15%. Okay. So male non-coffee drinker is 30. Okay. And then female coffee drinker 15. Female coffee drinker 15. So this would be 70. This should be 30. This is a 0. So they ask you the male coffee drinker in town A divide by male coffee drinker in town B. They asked, this was the question, the ratio of male coffee drinker in town A divide by the male coffee drinker in town B. So this would be 5 by 55 means 1 is to 11. Clear everyone? Anyone have any doubt? Please ask me. You have anything to ask? So everyone, this much from the today class. Will continue discussion in next class. So let me know if you have any concern, any doubt, so that I can clarify that before I'll conclude today class. Thank you everyone.
Thank you, sir.